and she said yes to God. And I know that he wants happiness and joy for me more than I could ever imagine or more than I ever knew for myself. He wants it more than I do. And so I had to say, I need to say yes to him. And sure, he could have prevented what happened. Sure, he could have. He's God. He can do anything he wants. But he didn't. And there's a bigger plan for me, and I need to listen to him and figure out what that plan is. And so, and that's a daily thing to ask him. Like, what is your will? What do you want me to do? And like I said, it's a work in progress. Like, hourly, like, day by day, like, minute by minute. But, you know, it's something I keep trying to do. Because I know that God that I grew up learning about, and that God that I talked to when I was a little girl, he would never do this to me on purpose, because he loves me, and he wants me to be happy. And so once I let some of that go, that anger, that bitterness and sadness, then I was able to start to choose joy. And like I said, I'm still battling it, but that fiat, that moment that I say yes, that I let go of the anger and the resentment, was the moment that my soul was at ease. And what's really important is what you do after the pain. And do you choose joy? What's your fiat moment? Embracing my gifts is another way that I'm here. And so my gifts, I've always known that helping others, laughter and optimism are my gifts, but those aren't your gifts. You all have different gifts. And you have to figure out what those gifts are to help you through what you're going through. And you use your gifts to find your joy. Resilience, that's a word that, working in a school, we always talk about resilience. What are, those kids that have a not so great life, but they seem to be just doing so well. They're off on to college, they're happy, and their life is just, their home life is just not so great. And you think, what do they have in them that makes them resilient? And when I was at my widow getaway this summer, we had somebody who talked about resilience, and he changed my whole way of thinking about it. That resilience isn't a character trait that you're born with, it's something that you build. And so earlier when I talk about choosing joy, it's an action. And so is resilience. So are those factors that are going to help you to move forward in your pain and your trauma. And so, I'm finding my gifts, and I've talked about some of those resilient factors, but faith is a huge one. Social support is a huge one. Optimism is a great resilient factor. And I talked about those a little bit. Being healthy, both physically and mentally. I mean, it only makes sense. In order to be mentally healthy, you need to be physically healthy. And in order to be mentally healthy, you also need to accept help. And so letting your pride aside, if you need help, we can't get through things on our own sometimes. And we need extra help, and that's okay, because who put people in our lives to help us? Oh, God. He gave people gifts and strengths. He made people smart enough to become therapists and helpers. And so why shouldn't we go to those people if we need that? I did. I had to. I went to a therapist, and I had to take medication for anxiety and depression. I'm not saying that that's your path, but I'm just saying, if you need the help, put the pride aside. That was hard for me at first when people were trying to help me. I don't need it. I can do it on my own, but I couldn't. And so once I put my pride aside and realized people are there to help me, that also helped me to move forward. Faith, I just kind of touched on that, but prayer is wonderful and helps build your relationship with God, but you have to put your prayer into action. I would love to just sit on the couch and pray all day, but it's probably not going to do anything for me other than building a relationship with God. But I have to do what God's asking me to do, and that means I have to get off my couch, and I have to have action in my life and change it. Facing your fear is another resilient factor. I did that. I went to the lake. I was so afraid to go to the lake forever. I was so afraid to drive by the lake. It caused just terrible emotion in me. And I decided I'm not going to let that lake control me. Andy loved that lake. And so I faced that fear. I went to the lake. I've been there. And actually I find comfort there now. So facing your fears. Helping others is another huge factor to help you to, put your life at ease or your tragedy at ease. God is in others. But do others see God in you? Do they see Jesus in you? And when others see him in us, we become son and we set fires in others. And I want to set fires in others. I want people to see me and see Jesus in me. And I want that, really it helps me even more than it helps the other person. When you're helping others, it makes you feel so good, like you're making a difference. And lastly, we cannot be here without my tribe, my family, my friends, my community. They mean so much to me, and people are good, and I think we get lost in that with all like the campaigns and the terrible things on the news. When Andy went missing, the sheriffs and the police and all the volunteers, they were like my family. They wanted to find Andy just as much as I did. And that put a new faith back in me in people. Because people are good, and Jesus was in those people helping me. And that's when I talked about earlier, I didn't see it then, but I see it now. That he was there through other people. I found a wonderful group called the Modern Widows Club. And actually some of my people are here because they're so wonderful and loving and supportive. But I don't believe in coincidences. Again, like I had said, that Modern Widows Club is a nationwide group. And there's one in Minnesota, and guess where it is? Waconia. So, which I just think is kind of strange. So, I don't think I would be as far as I am without them. I went to my first Modern Widows Club in January after Andy passed away, and it felt like home immediately when I went there. These people understood me more than anybody else, more than family, more than friends. They knew what I was going through, and they knew how to help me. And then my own family. My mother-in-law moved from Egan to Waconia just to be with my family. My mom retired early to help me. I have a babysitter anytime I want. I can, I wouldn't have been able to do it without them. My brother helped me with all my finances. So I was super lucky in that way. And strangers. I had strangers showing up at my doorstep with coffee, with pizza, with money, because they just wanted to help. When I was on that road, one of the first people that I encountered was an ambulance driver. And the first thing that he said to me was, "Can I pray with you?" And he embraced me and my friend and prayed with me. And 1 year later to that day, he showed up at my house and he said, "You probably don't remember me." And I said, "Of course I do, Dave. You prayed with me. You're the ambulance driver." And he gave me a box of chocolates. And so people are just so good. And I just want, if you take away anything, take that away. I mean, be Jesus, Jesus, let people see Jesus in you. Okay, so let's just talk just a little bit about what we can do to help others. One of our most difficult tasks as a friend is to understand when we don't understand. And so I know two things in life, and I can proudly say that I know these things. Number one, we are born. And number two, we die. It happens. But the funny thing about grief, if there is anything funny about it, is that nobody wants to talk about it. When someone dies, nobody wants to talk about it. And I hate that. It's so sad because we are all going to experience grief. We are all going to have somebody die in our lives. And so why shouldn't we talk about it? And one of the reasons is we don't want to upset someone. We don't want to make them feel sad. Well, to be honest, there isn't a day or a moment that I'm not thinking about Andy. So if someone were to come up to me and ask me a question, that's not going to make me more sad. I'm not going to forget that he died and bring it up, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's right, he died." No, I'm sad. So that's a strange thing about it. And then the other reason that we don't talk about it is because we feel uncomfortable. We don't know what to say. And that's true. There isn't a right thing to say. I work with children or adolescents, and I have talked to a lot of people that have lost loved ones. And one of the first things I usually will say to them is, I don't have anything that's going to help take your pain away, because there's not a perfect thing for me to say. But I will be here for you to help you and give you whatever you need. So don't think that you have to come up with some perfect phrase that's going to magically help somebody, because it's not. I've heard them all, literally, I've heard them all. I've heard all of the phrases, not one of them help. So just know that. But one of the things that is just really funny about it is that not saying anything because you don't want to upset us actually has the opposite effect, where we feel more alone, we feel forgotten, and we are avoided. I don't want to talk to that widow. That's really uncomfortable. I don't know what to say to her. And heck, aren't we going through enough that we should be avoided? And I'm not saying that everybody does that, but we feel uncomfortable. We don't know what to say. So what do we say? Well, I already just said you don't know what to say, but I just want to, I've been to a lot of widow groups. I've talked to a lot of widows and widowers and know what has worked for me. And I know what's helped and what hasn't helped. And I want to preface first, because if you've said these things, don't worry, because I have too. So don't feel bad. You don't know if you've never experienced, intense grief. But one of the first things that used to drive me crazy is, you are so strong. And early in my grief, I couldn't see it. How could I be strong? I literally pulled myself off the bathroom floor. I haven't showered in 3 days. How am I strong? Am I strong because my husband died? That doesn't make somebody strong. What choice did I have? But I've taken that word back, and I've given it new meaning to myself. And I'm strong because I've made changes, and I've accepted help, and I've leaned into my faith, and I started helping others, and I made a choice to be happy and live after death. But I also cry, and I accept help, and I let grief have its moment. I know how to cope with it more, so I don't let it give in. I don't have those intense days as much, because I know strategies that help me. But even in the happiest moment, there's always going to be grief for me, because he is not there. And so that's why we say we move forward, because he is not there, and we love him. A common Minnesota phrase is, how are you doing? And early in my grief, I was a little bit more jaded. I'm not going to lie about that. But I thought in my head, do you really want to know how I am? Or should I just say fine? Because that's what we want when we say that. We want to say, how are you? Oh, good. How are you? Well, I'm having a nightmare. How are you? I'm living my worst nightmare. Obviously that's just something that comes out of our mouth. But don't ask that question if you don't really want to know the answer. Comparing your tragedy to mine, or comparing your tragedy to others. And we do that out of the nicest, kindest way. Because we want to help and we want to empathize with somebody. But comparing a divorce to a death, comparing a mental illness to a death, why do we have to do that? I don't know what it's like to go through a divorce, and you don't know what it's like to go through the death of a spouse. They're both bad things. Can't we just say that? Can't we just be there for each other? And it's just not helpful. So, it comes from a loving place, but it's just not a helpful phrase. You're not alone, you have your kids and family. And that was a hard one for me too, because I have to take care of those children. And they're a lot of work. And I've never felt more alone in my life after Andy died. I could be sitting in a large room, or Christmas with loud and laughter, and I felt so alone. And I've changed that. I don't want people to feel alone, but I also want people to be able to talk about it, and that's why it's important for me to be talking about it. So let's key in on what is helpful to make this a little bit more positive of a spin. Show up. Don't say, call me if you need me. I never will. I'm never going to call you. I can give an example of showing up. I was just recently mowing my lawn this summer, and my siding had some little holes. I think it was a woodpecker or something that was pecking away at it. And somebody just came and filled them for me. I think I started crying while I was mowing. But that's just a perfect example, just showing up. Bring a pizza, but you don't need to stay. Just bring the pizza. Exit. Sometimes we want you to stay. Show up. It doesn't have to be money. You don't have to do anything for money. You don't have to spend money or get people things. You can send a card. You can plow their driveway. You can, pray pray for them. And you don't even have to tell them you're praying for them. You don't even have to say, I'm praying for you. You could just do it. That'd be great too. Call, text, listen, laugh, and then the biggest one is say their name. I love when people talk about my husband with me and ask me questions. My children love to hear about their daddy, and their little faces just light up, especially like when they have a funny story about him. And we need to keep saying their name because they were alive and they were loved, and we need to stop being afraid of saying the wrong thing and doing the wrong thing. We need to help others that are in loss. So that one's very, very important. Okay, so this is my final slide, but I just want to talk a little bit about a widow's perspective, because I would really love to be able to have you all live with a widow's perspective without the loss that I've experienced, because I have a new meaning, I have a new take on life. I know why we are here. I know we're sent in love, and we're sent to love. And relationships are what is so important. Relationship with God, relationship with your family, relationship with each other, with your community, with your neighbors. We are sent to love, and that's what we are sent to do, so we can go back and be in ultimate love with God. I know that life didn't do this to me. It happened in my lifetime. And I think that's a really important thing. Any tragedy or trauma you have, life didn't do this to me. It happened to me in my lifetime. And just changing the way we think about that. Instead of looking at your past and saying, look at my life, look at the pain, look at all my pain. Well, look to the future and know that you do have a future, and look towards the light. Don't sweat all the small stuff. Easier said than done, and especially as you walk out of here and go back to your loved ones and happy life. I hope that I never change this perspective. I hope that this is something that is going to be instilled in me forever, because I've really enjoyed not sweating the small stuff, because knowing that life is so much more important than some of the little things. Hugging your loved ones, saying I love you, don't hold a grudge, live with no regret. Obviously, be fiscally responsible as well. Beef shopping is a thing. I'm not going to lie about that. Say what you feel. Don't be afraid to say what you feel. If you love someone, tell them. Materials don't matter. Have others see Jesus do others see Jesus in me? Living your life that way. It's easier said than done. Very, like I said, work in progress. But I want you to know that that God is a better plan for you than you could ever imagine. There's going to be hurt and pain in this lifetime. That's unavoidable. But I do know He brought me this far, so I think He's just going to keep bringing me, hopefully. But I do want to just end in a Bible verse. It's from Isaiah. And it goes like this. From behind you, you will hear a voice. This is the way, walk in it. And I don't know about you, but I'm just going to keep on walking and knowing that the darkness will never win, because the light is always brighter. There's always light. So whatever you take away from this, just know that you can do it. It takes work, but if I can do it, you can do it. And one of my hubby's favorite bands, Dave Matthews Band, Life is Short, that's for certain. And last but not least, these are my sweet little reasons for happiness. This is my little Sully, and he is 18 months old. My Ike, he loves running like his daddy did. And then my daughter, Gracie, she just started enjoying horseback riding lessons. So I live for them. And myself. If you do want to hear more, I did just finish writing a book. I'm getting it published. It's going to be out this summer. It goes into a little more detail about the situation in my life and kind of what I talk about in the presentation. And then I do have a blog that I write. It's called The Wicked Widow. And the reason I chose that, my hubby's favorite movie was Good Will Hunting. And so you got to be wicked funny, wicked smart. And so that's my Wicked Widow. And so it's just different viewpoints of life and living through loss and tragedy and trauma. So you can follow that. You can look it up on Facebook or the website as well. Well, thank you all for coming tonight. I hope you had some little takeaways, and I really enjoyed speaking with everybody.